Now that you know the different types of pronouns, it's also helpful to know what some of the most common pronoun errors are in English. In this video, we'll go over some of the most common types of pronoun errors and learn a few basic rules to correct them. Before we start, it's helpful to understand one basic rule of pronoun usage. A basic rule of pronoun usage is that a pronoun must agree with its antecedent in number and gender. Agree with what? The antecedent. The antecedent is the original word or phrase to which a pronoun refers. For example, I asked Ahmed where we should meet, and he suggested room 211. This means that, especially when you're writing, you have to choose the correct pronoun to the noun you are referring to, otherwise the reader gets confused. As I mentioned in the last video on types of pronouns, pronouns also help to make meaning clear in writing. Now, let's look at some common errors that happen when dealing with this rule and how to solve them. The technologist checked his instruments. In this example, the antecedent technologists is plural, but the pronoun used is singular, his. The correct sentence is, the technologists checked their instruments. Now, the pronouns agree in terms of number. A similar error may occur in terms of gender. Please tell Elizabeth that he should sign up for the barbecue. Because I know Elizabeth is a girl's name and that she prefers to refer to herself as she or her, I can change the sentence. Please tell Elizabeth that she should sign up for the barbecue. But nowadays, our ideas about gender are changing, and you can't always assume that someone refers to themselves in the masculine ways, he or him, or the feminine ways, she, her, just by their name or how they look. In the past, we used to use he or she when we were unsure of the gender of the antecedent. For example, the engineer is coming today and he or she will conduct an analysis. Some people still do this, but it is wordy and hard to read. The best way to avoid this situation is to change the sentence to use a plural subject if possible. The engineers are coming today and they will conduct an analysis. Of course, it's not always possible to do this. However, nowadays, several official citation resources, such as the Chicago Manual of Style, also say that the following is possible. The engineer is coming today and they will conduct an analysis. They, them, their, theirs has now come to symbolize gender neutrality when you do not know the gender identity of the antecedent. In informal situations and in spoken language, this would be fine. However, this is still not always accepted for very formal writing standards. For more information on this and gender neutrality in writing, see the links below this video. Let's look at another error. Each of these laptops has their drawbacks. If you looked at the module on subject-verb agreement, you would know that most, not all, indefinite pronouns like someone, everyone, anything, nowhere, etc. are singular. In this case, the pronoun there does not match with the indefinite pronoun each, which is singular. Remember that while most indefinite pronouns are singular, there are some which are strictly plural, and still others which can be either singular or plural. And remember that what we said earlier about using they, their, them, theirs to signal gender neutrality may also be applied here too, but of course only in the case of people and when you are trying to be sensitive to gender neutrality. No one has finished their report yet. The next sentence with an error is, I suggest that you remove the hard drive from the computer and have it repaired. In this sentence, we don't know what the pronoun it is referring to as there are too many antecedents. If there is more than one antecedent before the pronoun, it's a good idea not to use a pronoun in this case. I suggest that you remove the hard drive from the computer and have the hard drive repaired. Or, I suggest that you remove the hard drive from the computer and have the computer repaired. Another example of an error with vague pronoun reference is this one. Because the engineering report was wrong, the Strata Council got frustrated with them. The antecedent here is the report, but the pronoun is them. The writer implies that people are angry with the engineers, but they are not mentioned earlier. The fix would be to include the noun in the sentence and remove the pronoun. Because the engineering report was wrong, the Strata Council got frustrated with the engineers. One last vague pronoun reference for you. When the organizers found out that there was construction on 12th Avenue, they changed their plans. It created chaos for the attendees. Pronoun reference between two sentences needs to be constructed carefully. Here there are two antecedents, construction on 12th Avenue and the change in plans. What does it refer to? Again, as there are two antecedents, it might be better to be more specific. When the organizers found out that there was construction on 12th Avenue, they changed their plans. This change created chaos for the attendees. A demonstrative adjective "this" was added to the noun change to make this clearer to the reader. Let's move on to this sentence. The scientist who arrived yesterday, he is starting today. Obviously, there is no need to add he in this sentence because there is already a relative pronoun who to introduce the adjective clause. This often happens in the case of relative clauses or adjective clauses. Here is a very common problem in written sentences. Those papers are theirs. Remember that possessive pronouns use no apostrophes. Be aware of this error. I asked to borrow his tool, but he wouldn't lend me. There are verbs called transitive verbs such as give, teach, drink, or hold, which must always have a direct object. I asked to borrow his tool, but he wouldn't lend it to me. Finally, the last error we'll talk about is demonstrated in this sentence. I and he will discuss this later. The person speaking is always mentioned last. He and I will discuss this later. And that's it. There are a lot of things to remember, but the most important thing to remember with pronoun usage is to make sure that what you are referring to with the pronoun is clear and understood by all. Thanks for listening.